Labour has said it will launch a drive to get 1,000 more nurses into training this year if it wins the election. The party's leader Ed Miliband said the move formed part of Labour's aim to recruit 20,000 more NHS nurses. Half of nurses said wards are dangerously understaffed, he told BBC Breakfast. The Conservatives say they inherited a nursing crisis from Labour, with staff shortages contributing to the Stafford hospital scandal between 2005 and 2008. We have turned that round with record-high nurse numbers on our wards and a new focus on compassionate care, a spokesman said. The Tories have already pledged an extra £8 billion a year by 2020 for the NHS in England if they win the election. But Mr Miliband said the Conservatives didn't know where a penny of it was coming from. Of the £2.5 billion promised by Labour, he said this was a down payment and it was clear where the money was coming from. We are going to have a budget within the first month of a Labour government, he added. It's going to put in place the mansion tax, the tobacco levy and the clampdown on tax avoidance by the hedge funds to get the money flowing into our NHS straight away. Mr Miliband was speaking to BBC Breakfast ahead of a speech on Tuesday to student nurses at Manchester Metropolitan University. There, he will highlight new figures to emerge through Freedom of Information (FOI) requests which suggest 1/3 of NHS trusts were investigated last year over concerns about safe staffing. A&E crisis. Mr Miliband will say this disclosure follows reports in the last week showing the number of people waiting over 4 hours at accident and emergency departments has risen by over 50% compared to last year. 2/3 of nurses say patients are missing out on care because there just aren't enough nurses on the wards, he will claim. None of this has happened by accident. It has happened as a direct result of choices this government has made, cutting nurse training, failing to understand that if people don't get the care they need at home and in their own communities, it ends up in an A&E crisis. His party has said it wants to pay for extra nurses through its Time to Care fund, which will use money from a mansion tax on properties worth over £2 million, and also by cracking down on tax avoidance, and imposing levies on tobacco firms. Political battleground. Shadow Health Secretary Andy Burnham said there was a severe shortage of staff in the NHS, exacerbated by what he said was a stranglehold over recruitment by private agencies. We have got to get this agency bill down, he told BBC Radio 4's Today programme. It is literally going through the roof. Other aims of Labour's rescue plan include early planning to avoid a winter crisis in hospitals, and tackling what it describes as the £300 million scandal of vulnerable people being kept in hospital this year because they cannot get the care they need to be discharged. The NHS has become a major battleground for the main political parties, with more announcements on the service expected over the coming days. The £8 billion a year figure pledged by the Conservatives for the NHS in England by 2020 if they win the election is one which NHS England boss Simon Stevens cited as the funding gap between what the NHS currently receives and what it needs to implement his modernisation programme. Pressed about the £8 billion figure, Mr Burnham said Labour would do whatever it takes to secure the future of the health service but was not going to give the NHS cheques that are going to bounce in a few years' time. A Conservative spokesman said, this government inherited a nursing crisis with the scandal of short-staffed wards at mid-staffs and other failing hospitals. Unlike Ed Miliband, we have committed the additional £8 billion a year the NHS says it needs, which is the only way to ensure hospitals have the money they need to increase staff. The Lib Dems have also pledged £8 billion for the NHS funded by scrapping some tax reliefs. NHS staff and patients want to know the health service is secure for the long term, a party spokesman said. Until Labour agree to make the necessary resources available, all they can offer is warm words and nothing more.